Hello, everyone, and welcome to our webinar hosted by MindMax and partnered with APSIA, Resolve Your Enrollment Funnel Challenges. Today, our presenters are going to be Lee Maxey, CEO of MindMax, and Christine Chokrick, Vice President of Marketing. Today, we will discuss the importance of identifying and addressing leaks in the marketing and enrollment funnel. Our agenda for today will include the anatomy of the funnel and leak points, process, people, and technology, and addressing leaks at each stage in the funnel. A little bit here about our presenters. For those of you that aren't familiar with MindMax, we were founded in 2009. Christine has just joined our team, and we're so happy to have her here on our first MindMax webinar with us, Sia and Christine and Lee.
Hello, everyone. This is Lee Maxey, and just want to remind everyone that feel free to ask questions in the questions section during the webinar. Some of those we'll answer during the webinar, and then we'll reserve about 10 minutes towards the end of the hour to answer those questions specifically. And if we can't get to all the questions, we will follow up after the webinar with answers to each question. So, briefly about MindMax. MindMax was founded in 2009, as Andrea mentioned, and we work with a variety of universities. We are 100% dedicated to higher ed, and then our work is completely around the entire funnel, from the demand generation all the way through to enrollment. We focus on creating enrollment intelligence by generating revenue increases, optimal cost of acquisition, and how to make a more frictionless speed of conversion through the funnel for each of the prospective students. We are going to be talking about the enrollment funnel today. Specifically, we'll be talking about each stage of this funnel. This is not accurate to everybody's funnel. If you have a more complicated application process, or you're working with international students, veterans, and so forth, there could be all sorts of different smaller sub-stages within a funnel. We're using this generic model to talk about some main stages within the funnel. So one of my favorite sayings is, don't pitch until you have a catcher behind the plate. I've talked with many universities who are focused on demand generation. I'm sure many of you, from a marketing standpoint, get asked to send more traffic to the site or generate more leads. And one of the things that continues to boggle my mind is a lot of schools just don't have an organized plan or capability from a technological standpoint to handle leads when they're generated, or even handle traffic when it comes to their site. So the premise here is make sure your funnel is a rigorous and mature funnel before you start really pouring things in the top.
All right, so again, this is Christine. I'm thrilled to be here today. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about the funnel, and the purpose of this is to really give you some actionable items that can identify for you where you have leaks in the funnel, as well as how to fix them. We can't underestimate the cost of a leaky funnel. You all have enrollment goals for the various programs that you run, and the more you can see where those leaks are happening, the more you can then make sure that you're hitting those goals.
So with this funnel, one of the things that I like to think about is, what is the cost at each stage in the funnel? And so this is an example of a non-credit certificate, and the cost of the non-credit certificate is $3,500. And so working up from the bottom toward the top, using, and these are an example from an existing case, but using these numbers of conversions, meaning 3,500 deposits, 6,000 admitted students, approximately 6,000 completed their application. And the reason why there's a very similar number for completed and admitted is it really wasn't a very high bar to become admitted. Applicants were approximately 7K, and this could be app starts. And that's the difference between app starts and completed. And then prospects or leads. These are identified prospects or people that had submitted an RFI form or something like that. And then suspects and web traffic being approximately 1 million. And that's a combination of people visiting the site as well as people who are prospective students for this program. And then on the left-hand side in the pink boxes are the values for each stage of the funnel, doing math upwards from the $3,500 all the way up to the $1 million in the traffic. And the value for each of these is really important, especially around the delta. And if you look on the right-hand side, that's the delta value if 100% of the stage above it converts to the next stage, which obviously is not going to happen in ever at 100%. But it gives you an idea from a magnitude standpoint where to focus one's attention. So specifically, if we take a look at moving from web traffic to lead, the value delta there is almost $600. To go from a lead to an actual applicant, that's actually a delta value on the left-hand side of $1,100, which is pretty significant. So one of the areas to focus on for this scenario would be how to get leads to start the application process. And then the next big value area is going from admitted students to actually enrolled students. In this case, the delta there is about $1,500. And if all of them were to go, all the 6,000 were admitted, became students, that would be a $4 million value to the school. So this is an important model. This is something that we do with schools to try and identify where there's real opportunities to generate value or to improve results towards the bottom of their funnel. So in thinking about how to address leaks in a funnel or any organizational change opportunity, I look at three, and it's very common to look at these three categories of focus. One is process, the second is people, and the third is technology. So process is where I generally would like to start. And we try to focus on optimizing business practices in the enrollment sequence so that you can make the most of your limited resources. The limited resources could be people, it could be marketing budget, it could be a whole variety of things, but everyone has limited resources to some extent. The second part of process is to provide a better experience for prospective students. A lot of times students feel like they go through a labyrinth of complicated things to be able to get to their goal of applying. And schools, not necessarily purposely, but schools can make the process of applying or enrolling more difficult than it needs to be. The second area is around people. And this is what I call from Jim Collins, right people, right seats. So putting people in a place where they can succeed. And then also deciding what kinds of activities and people resources do you want to apply in-house versus using outsourced services or partners. And then the third area is technology. And without a full complement of technology, the burden generally falls in the people area. And the people then take over that responsibility. So we're going to take a look at a couple different examples as we go through this. A process example is to use a segmented marketing and recruitment workflow. This is an example that we use out of Pardot, which is a marketing automation system. And the goal here is to accurately identify people's interest in a given program and to not miss out on when someone's really interested. But also, if you look at the bottom of this, and I'm sorry if it's too hard to see on your screen, but the bottom example is wrong fit, and that's the end of the engagement, or they go into a different sequence. But one of the things that we find incredibly valuable is when to disqualify someone and to stop the marketing effort around a specific program for that person who's been disqualified for whatever reasons. So that's an example of a process example, and knowing this process and defining this for your recruitment funnel is really important because it enables you to then, if you can go to the next slide, look at creating a lead sequence where we can score and determine whether or not someone is worth or should be outbound called. So everyone has limited resources for outreach. If you have 100 phone calls that you potentially could make, but you can only make 20 that day, this is a way to determine that these are the 20 phone calls that are a higher priority and the phone calls that we should be making that day. This is something that works well when it's connected with the CRM and also connected with your Google Analytics, because then it's possible to identify someone's interest both through their behavior with emails, but also their behavior on your websites. The next area to focus on is really people. And this is not people without technology, but people are generally involved in this phase, which is the outbound calling at the bottom here, the emails, whether they're automated email sequences or they're personalized emails, live chat, or potentially managing the retargeting sequences for people that have not identified themselves as a lead, but people that are actively interested by their demonstration on traffic on your website. And so you want to have the right people doing that, or enough of the people capacity-wise to be able to do that, to be able to do each of those functions. On the technology part of the solution, the full stack or the stack of technology that we think is necessary and adequate to be able to manage through the funnel is obviously some kind of analytics. Often it's Google Analytics, but it could be some other analytics tool. Having a website that helps you learn about how people are behaving on the website and purposely channeling people to behaviors that you could then identify as high quality. Using marketing automation to be able to do some level of lead scoring, and that lead scoring will then determine how to prioritize your activities. A CRM, which is your sort of single point of truth, where you're understanding people's behavior, assigning tasks, and so forth, and then either a shopping cart or some kind of application, I apologize, but an application system that allows people to apply to the program. And not having a connected set of applications makes it very difficult to measure and track people's behavior through the process. So these are the parts of the technology solution that we consider to be necessary in order to track and measure and determine what's happening for someone in the funnel.
All right, thanks, Lee. Next, we'll start working you through the different stages of the funnel and give you some specific action items that you can take to address those leaks. As marketers and as consumers, we've all seen marketing and advertising that has been too much, that hasn't been the right message. So it's important that we take all of this in the context of every point of communication needs to be respectful, timely, and relevant. And I'll talk about that as I go through some specific tactics that we'll use. Today we have more tools in our marketing toolkit than we've ever had before. I've been in marketing for a very long time, and there are points in time when some of the digital capabilities weren't even available. Not only do we have those tools, but we also have a lot of data that we can use to support that. And so it's important that we consider everything within our toolkit when we start looking at how we can fix those leaks in the funnel. All right. So Lee talked a little bit, earlier about sort of creating that value. And this funnel is showing you how to start with looking at KPIs. So again, it's a different way of looking at the funnel. And what you can see is we're starting at the top with your web traffic, and we're bringing you all the way down to your enrollment. With this funnel, we have very specific KPIs that we've identified for this particular client. It takes you all the way through. It's important when you're looking at your funnel that you start with identifying those KPIs. So what is your conversion rate from web traffic to lead goal? What's your conversion rate then to application goal? And what's your conversion rate to enrollment goal? Without those data points, it's going to be very difficult for you to make kind of that conversion optimization that you want to make. All right, so we're going to begin with the end in mind. So we started at the top of the funnel, we worked our way down, but we all know that the enrollment goals are what we need to achieve. So we're going to start with that. And I'm now going to work you back up the funnel, and we're going to talk about where you can identify your leaks and what you can do about them. Okay. All right, the first is your admits to enrolled leak. All right, this is by far your most critical part of your enrollment funnel, right? This group has invested, they've spent a lot of time engaged with you, and you want to really give this group a scalable white glove experience. If you're losing them here, you've already invested so much marketing spend, so many people and time resources to bring them all the way through. So here are a few specific examples of some things that you can do to really help enhance that white glove experience. Make sure that you're not forgetting to continue to nurture them through email campaigns. So whether you're modifying existing email campaigns or perhaps you're creating new email lead nurture campaigns, that's really going to help move them from the admit to the enrolled. As always, you want to make sure that the timing is right, the frequency is right. Look at all of your email open rates. If not, we know we need to test some subject lines. Are your click-through rates strong? There, maybe your content wasn't relevant. Maybe you need to deliver more messages. As I said earlier, everything that we do from a communication, we want it to be respectful, timely, and relevant. Another important aspect as multi-channel marketers is we want to have a coordinated outreach communication plan. So if we're sending communication via email, congratulations then. Any personal outreach that we do should also message that. This is a great opportunity to reach out to admits, congratulate them on the acceptance, see if they have any questions about the program, really engage with them. Again, you've already invested so much to get them there. Another opportunity with this group is finding out more about their decision criteria. If you're understanding how they got there, what their decision points are, you can gather some really great market intelligence opportunities. Even if you lose them at this point.
So one of the things we find is people don't come, and in a phone call or in a live chat session, one of the things you can find out is why they went somewhere else or what the decision criteria is, and that then gives your marketing intelligence the ability to change how you go to market for the next semester.
Another final thing not to forget during this point is retargeting messaging. Keeping your school top of mind is always going to be important and will help convert.
And it's a different kind of messaging. Retargeting is one of the most cost-effective ways to engage with people. It's gentle if it's done respectfully, as Christine mentioned, and the messaging here is targeted to people who have been accepted. So it's not call it selling or promotional message, but really it's a welcoming message, looking forward to seeing you. Maybe it's images of the campus, maybe it's images of something to do with the program, and messaging related to welcoming more than actually marketing or selling.
Great. All right. So again, we're moving from the bottom of the funnel all the way to the top. So next we're going to look at leaks during the application start process to the application completion. Here, we cannot emphasize enough, streamlining the application process will increase applicants. You all have seen it before. If the form is too complicated, if it takes too much time, if it's not asking the right questions, you're going to lose them here. We had an example with MindMax of an international program, and part of the application process was asking for, I think you said, a social security number, which isn't relevant to that particular market. So it's really important to make sure that you've made it as easy as possible for them to complete that application. Again, lead nurturing through email is another important way to continue to engage with that audience. Again, I go back to make sure it's respectful, make sure it's timely, and make sure it's relevant. And look at all of your email stats. That will give you actionable items so that you continue to modify and improve conversion. Adding and modifying outreach will also help increase application completions. Here, you want to make sure that you're communicating with them at every stage. And once again, let's not forget about retargeting. As we said, we want to make sure that we're making those messages very personalized, but we want to make sure that the school is kept top of mind.
If you remember back to the leaky funnel with the cost values in there, this group right here, app start to app completes, or just app starts in general, are one of the more valuable deltas that you can affect. So if we go to the next slide, here's a case example. A school that we worked with, it's a public school, was having trouble with enrollment goals. And as we looked into the full funnel, we noticed that there was a huge number of app abandonments. And these abandoned apps, part of it was the app process was a little complicated and maybe more complicated than it needed to be. But even with that, adding some personalized email sequences, adding some outreach during the process to encourage people to finish their application, to find out what their goal was for starting the application in the first place, and then reminding them to finish. We helped increase the app completions, and then eventually were able to get a 12% increase in the acceptance to deposit, which was exceeding. We had a 10% goal with the school. We were able to exceed that through that personalized outreach. Just want to remind everyone, if you have any questions as we're going through this, feel free to ask them during our session so that we can answer them potentially during the webinar rather than towards the end.
All right, great. So as we continue to move up in the funnel, we're going to talk about qualified lead to application start rate. And here, your primary goal is to reduce friction, right? So this is a great opportunity to create some incentives. And I think we tend to think of incentives as only financial incentives, but you could be creating compelling events. It might be about upcoming deadlines or other opportunities. It may be pricing incentives, but I just want to make sure everyone remembers that doesn't have to be the only compelling incentive out there. This is where technology can really help. A good marketing automation tool allows you to recognize quality behavior. So, I can't highlight enough, if you don't have this tool in place, you can still look at the engagement that you're having with some of your leads. It's just going to be far more time consuming and certainly more manual. Live chat is another great place to help move people from qualified lead to application start. You can set up technology, so if a visitor is on your application page and they haven't done anything after a period of time, here comes a live chat. It's going to help you. That's another really important aspect. Again, continue to increase communication with those leads. Modifying your email lead nurture campaigns will also help increase applications. These are just some examples of some segmented marketing activities. You develop some specific email campaigns with specific calls to action tailored to each program and to your audience. You segment your leads and you deploy them. These examples are deployed through Pardot. This is where the technology really helps.
And then these are two examples of applications that we know at this stage of the process worked really well because we did A/B testing to the point where we found, for instance, that email to the right, the how to apply video ended up being one of the most valuable assets that we had created in this sequence. And so we got a very high open rate, but more importantly, we got a tremendously high click-through rate on that video. And I encourage people to think about using video more because in certain populations, international especially, video is tremendously valuable and tends to get a very high click-through rate. So in terms of qualification, one of the things that we find really important is to qualify leads. And Christine's going to talk about the qualifying leaks in a minute. But the qualifiers that we tend to use are, number one, what's their level of motivation? Why do they want to take this program, or how important it is to them to take whatever program or course that they're looking at? Second is, do they have the prerequisites met? For some, it's an age thing. Some, it's 5 years experience in the industry. For some, it might be having a bachelor's before you take a grad program, and making sure that they actually have those prerequisites. That should be a pretty straightforward thing to determine. The third is funding access. Do they have access to the money themselves, discretionary income, and taking a look at certain market segments, for instance, programs for teachers or social workers. A lot of times they personally don't have the funds to take an expensive program. However, they might have access to the funds. And so determining whether they individually have access to that funding or whether it's using it or working with a third party to be able to support them in taking a program. And then the fourth, and what we consider to be the most important qualifier, is the time, both chronological and also the time within a week. So if it's a 2-year program, do they have 2 years of their life they're willing to dedicate to take this program? Or if it's a very intensive program, maybe 15 hours a week, can they find 15 hours in each of their weeks for the duration of the program, whatever the length of that is, with their work schedule or their life schedule? So these are the 4 qualifiers that we use, and we'll go on to talk about the leaks next. So the leaks next, in terms of going from the lead form to qualified leads. This is something that we want to use a whole variety of tools to do. A marketing automation system is key to be able to do that. Creating incentives to get people to take actions is something that you can potentially do here. But the automation tool is really the cornerstone to making this work in a scalable way. Increasing communications with leads, seeing if they respond to your email sequences, open rates for emails, or as I said earlier, the click-through rates are very key indicators here. Live chat is one of the things that we find is incredibly powerful. Live chat is a way of collecting leads, but more importantly, live chat behavior, people who engage in live chat behave in a similar conversion rate as an inbound phone call. So that's a very big indication that someone's interested in a program and has a higher interest and would be worth investing more resource or effort to try and communicate with them. Uses of quizzes. So quizzes can be used or self-revealing information where people fill out a questionnaire. Could be a quiz, could be fun, but it's a way of giving the candidate or the prospective student a chance to share more about themselves, and that could be revealing. And then the modifying the email nurture sequence, if they are opening all of the emails that talk about payment plans or funding sources, or are they opening all the emails about what kinds of jobs can I get as a result of taking this program, those are indicators of what matters to them and what their decisioning criteria is. So an example that we've had with an Ivy League school that we worked with was, they had a year-over-year lower traffic, and that was something that was a concern to them. So they were looking at a real concern. They had a issue the year before where they missed some of their housing forecasting, which they had already paid for in advance. And so they were very concerned about having a full house in that upcoming summer. So one of the things that we did with them is we worked with them to provide a significant amount of emails. They had a lot of inquiries, but emails that nurtured people, handled about 4,000 incoming live chat requests, made over 600 outbound calls, and through this we were able to generate a very significant return in terms of qualifying these leads, and then eventually they went through to having quite a big impact in their year-over-year summer, and also enrolled their largest incoming class at the time historically.
All right, so now we're at high quality web traffic to lead form leak. So here we can't emphasize enough, please use lead forms. This is really going to help you track all of the behavior and capture those leads. Also, make sure those lead forms are connected to your marketing automation tool. This should not be manual. I actually personally had an experience many years ago when this was not the case, and the last thing you want to do is leave those leads hanging. You want to be able to communicate with them and move them through the funnel. I know Lee mentioned before, you can also use live chat to help collect leads. You can also improve your target market and your audience for your ad spend to help increase the conversion. We'll talk a little bit more about that when we talk about some web traffic. The strategic timing of your ad spend is important. So, program start dates and how long it takes someone to decide program are going to play a key role in when you start deploying your ads. You also want to test a lot of new ad creative, right? That's the beauty of the digital marketing landscape. It makes it very easy to test and to retest and to continue to improve those conversion rates. And don't forget about testing your lead forms, right? So you want to make sure that your lead forms only have essential information that are going to increase conversion. You're going to have all of the details that you need to capture above the fold. You've got some directional cues that will help convert, and of course, some compelling copy, ad, and calls to action.
We have a question back to the previous slide on what was the most effective, in the case example, emails, phone calls, and so forth. And from a scalability standpoint, as I mentioned, a million plus emails, it was a pretty significant email effort. And so from a scalability standpoint, emails, I believe, were one of the most effective tools. But a secondary was using retargeting or remarketing in a purposeful way that was timed around some of the application dates. So we were doing some incentives around early registration, some limited seating messaging in the retargeting, which was saying, get your stuff in now so that you can get into the class that you like. And then also, some outbound calling. I don't think the outbound calling was the thing that was the real lever there. I really think it was more the emails connected with the retargeting. And then the second question was, what is the ideal number of questions to ask on your lead form? And the pat answer on that is as few as possible. So the more questions you ask, the less you're going to get in terms of lead conversion or number of leads. So with every field on your lead form, be incredibly judicious about what am I going to do with this information. Just because you can doesn't mean you should. So for each field, have a really good reason in terms of why you're asking that. And we invite people to think of using a two-stage process rather than trying to get it all at one time. So there's nothing wrong with starting with the name and email as the only thing you're getting, and then going back out to that population and asking for more information. And that is a way to increase your lead pool, and then use retargeting and also emailing to try and get more information to qualify. And then another question, which I chuckle about, if you have a recruitment staff of one, how do you suggest handling live chat? Is it worth advertising a live chat that's available during a small window of time, noon to 2? So, two things there. One is, what kind of staff do you need to do live chat? And I would encourage you to think of having more than one person, just from a coverage standpoint. I use the term dead live chat, which may be not a good term, but and what I mean by that is live chat that's not actually live. So when you have a live chat function, like you said, if they're available from say 12 to 2 o'clock, at the other times live chat can still be available to someone who's on the website. It'll just be responded to in an email within 24 hours. So you can do that with one person. It doesn't have the same benefit of a live chat. And this might be an area where you're wanting to look at, I'll call it a more outside resource to potentially give you better coverage. And then last question is how are we defining retargeting? And so when we say retargeting or remarketing, we're talking about the banners that people would see based on their having visited a website. So they've come to the website, they've got either there's a pixel on the site, we now know their IP address, and we can send them messaging. You can also do this with email lists. If you have email lists of alumni, that's one of the groups that we encourage schools to retarget and to not email. Usually reaching out to alumni is sort of a third rail that you're not supposed to do from a promotional standpoint. But one of the things you can potentially do with the alumni office is get agreement to go out and retarget an alumni population. And that means showing banners that could be promotional or informative, and then addressing them when they come to the site and then start to behave and give you lead information. So thank you for the questions so far, and we'll answer more towards the end of the session as well.
Great. Yeah, so lead, it's a great slide because one of the questions was about the ideal length of a lead form, and these are just two examples of lead forms, and you can see just how clean and simple they are. The fewer the better, which is great. So. All right, so now we're at the very top of the funnel, web traffic to high quality web traffic. So this is where most of your media, some of your media spend is gonna play. But we don't want to forget how you can create pathways on your site that can guide your potential students through sort of the journey of looking at your programs. This will help, and this will give you some knowledge on not only how to where to retarget, but also what types of things are they interested in. Again.
So one of the things that we noticed with the international program we were doing is a huge number of clicks and traffic from the Philippines and from India for a program where no one had ever enrolled in this program from the Philippines, and the people who were coming from India didn't have the prerequisite qualifications to be able to be considered for this program. So that was a group that was a low quality web traffic that we just shut our spend off in those two countries because it was a giant waste of money. The pathways that Christine's mentioning are really important. The design of your microsite, landing page, or website is very important, and it can tell you a lot of information. So if someone's spending a lot of time on program or course details, or they're spending a lot of time on your tuition calculator, both of those things are examples of very high quality behavior, which can give you information about what's important to them. The strategic timing of ad spend, go ahead.
Yeah, it's also really important. Again, understanding how long it might take for you to convert. You're going to want to time those ads appropriately. I know we've talked about this before, but ad creative, you should always be testing, always making sure that your message is relevant, and also very personalized. The more you can segment, the more you can make sure that that message is getting to the right message is getting to the right person. I know we talked about this earlier, but again, all communication should always be respectful, timely, and relevant. When we talk about retargeting, we're not talking about, sort of that haunting ad that seems to follow you everywhere as you browse across the website. We're talking about very, sort of deliberate retargeting ads that will want people to engage with your school.
We had a school that had a 17 sessions or 17 exposures per day set up on their retargeting. And, I think they were doing a lot more damage with that than they were doing a benefit.
Yeah, absolutely. Remember that the spend for your high quality web traffic is going to be higher than your low quality web traffic, and also providing live chat to enable your higher quality web traffic to engage with you is, I know something that we've talked about all along the way. So you want to be sure when you start looking at your web traffic that you're understanding the overall experience across the web. So you need to set your web traffic KPIs. How often are people coming and visiting your site? Repeat visitors will translate to interest and loyalty. How long are they spending on the site? Longer sessions will show everyone that the website is engaging, interesting, and informative. What's your bounce rate? The lower this percentage, the more qualified traffic is going to your page and the more engaging your site. So that's when someone comes to your site and they immediately leave. They're not going anywhere else. Make sure that your page load time is fast. That's going to be really important. You know, as a society today, we're not particularly patient when it comes to online experience. So you've got to make sure that it's not taking them too long. And look at the average time on the page. The longer, the better. That's going to help make sure that the content that you're providing is relevant. If traffic is converting, then you know they're getting the information that they need. This is an example, and we want to give a shout out to SMU. It's a great partner of ours, and I know we've co-presented a UPSEA webinar with them before. So this is an example of a few digital marketing campaigns that we worked with them on. You know, it's important to make sure you've got a consistent look and feel for your brand messaging and that you're delivering it on a variety of tactics. Again, we've got that really big toolkit. Make sure you're using and testing all of them as it makes sense, and that you're looking at all of the data. That's always really important. Some will work better than others depending on what your program is. And again, know your funnel. We like to show this funnel again and again, but it's the most important tool that you will have when you start looking at every stage and you identify those key conversion KPIs for your school and your programs. That's when you can really start to see the success. Because when you make small changes, they can really translate into a lot more revenue based on higher enrollment.
We can't emphasize the importance of knowing your numbers enough. You should know your numbers at each stage of your funnel, whatever your funnel is. And as Christine mentioned, you should be always checking to see any small changes. And I use the term ABTs, always be testing. It's great to test, but test with a plan in mind, limiting a variable, so you're testing one variable at a time, and then see if you can get a result. One of the areas of frustration we have working with partners is people are always asking about, okay, when are enrollments going to change? Well, if it's a graduate level program, sometimes the consideration phase is 6 to 18 months. So it takes time sometimes to see the results at an enrollment level. If you have good information all the way through the funnel, you can start to show these incremental changes very quickly at the traffic level, at the high quality traffic level, at the lead level. And so even though you may not have the enrollment numbers yet, when someone's breathing down your neck for results, you can show them these incremental improvements over time. And so that's something that's really important to keep in mind, because everyone reports to someone, and it's important to be able to address those questions about how's it going and have we seen any improvements. So to sum things up, one, identify your leaks. So know your conversion rates and know your KPIs, constantly monitor. People, process, and technology. It's a systematic approach to look at where you have an ability to make a change. One of those areas might be really weak for you. One of those areas might be strong, and to be able to address things from a systematic standpoint. And then lastly, use all the tools in your toolkit in a respectful, timely, and relevant way. This recording of this webinar will be sent to you, so you'll have all these slides as well. So don't worry on that. And we have a few more questions that we'd like to answer. So one question is, why is retargeting so cost effective? So retargeting, by definition, you're retargeting someone who's already been to your website. So that's a really good behavior right there. And then the retargeting, you're not just going out into the universe, you're only sending it out to the people who have visited your website. They are seeing the ad or seeing the retargeting banner, but if they've already been to your website, most people's behavior is not to necessarily click on that ad, and you're only paying when someone clicks on that ad. So what they're likely to do is to see it, be reminded, and then go back to a cached URL that they have in their browser, and they don't really have a cost. You don't have a cost associated with that. So that's one of the reasons why retargeting is so effective. It also can be delivered in a very purposeful, targeted way. Next question, what if you don't have all the technology or all the applications described in that technology stack? This is a really good question, and there's not an easy answer for that. So one answer is to borrow it. So in your school, somewhere else in the university, sometimes there's a CRM that exists, a CRM that you can partition and use some of their CRM. You can also rent. One of the things that MindMax provides is we actually rent this technology or lease it on a monthly basis to schools that don't have that, and plug it into their student information system and plug it into their web analytics, and that can be a cost-effective approach. But one of the things that I encourage you to do is to make a business case for why you need this technology. And that's a really important thing to think about in all of this. As Christine mentioned, it really is about the bottom of the funnel. And if you can show that there's a potential business case to do something, a lot of times that makes it possible to get that funding. So next question, lead forms and around lead forms, and what is the most effective follow-up sequence on a lead form? As we mentioned, a graduate level program could be a 6 to 18 month consideration phase. And that consideration phase, you don't want to come right out of the gate blasting saying enroll now to someone who just filled out a lead form. So understanding what your consideration phase is for your programs. Online programs tend to have a shorter decision time frame. Certificate programs, non-credit certificate programs can be a 0 to 90-day consideration phase. So those are the kinds of things that you want to know before you start your lead sequences from your lead form. Sorry, another question?
Yeah.
Right. I didn't see it. So the question is, what is high quality web traffic? How do you define that? So high quality web traffic, we define by what we call high quality behavior indicators on your website. So you don't know the person's name, you know their IP address. They're coming to your site multiple times. That's one indicator. So that would be a low level indicator. They're going to your course details page and they're spending time in the course details page longer than say 10 or 15 seconds. They're going to your tuition, and your payment plan or your financial aid options and spending time there. If you have a financial aid or a payment calculator, they're actually using your payment calculator. We also encourage people to gate certain things still, whether it's a PDF form, whether it's even gating your application process with giving some small amount of information, which would then move them from high quality traffic to a lead. But those are all indicators of high quality web traffic. And that would be something that you'd want to test to determine over time whether you are accurate with your assumptions around whether this is high quality web traffic or not. I'll give another specific example that we do with summer programs for pre-college. We put a parents tab on the website, and we can assume with almost 100% certainty that a 15-year-old is not likely to click on the parents tab. That's something that's really important to know because the messaging to parents for a summer program is different than the general messaging you would do to a student or to just general messaging. Another example is organizing your website so that you can get good information about people. So we worked with a program where the tab for the incoming international students was called International Programs. And we discovered that 80% of the visitors from outside the country were never making it to this section of the website. They were not making it because in their mind, international programs was for United States students to go to other countries. So we did two things. One is we retargeted anyone who was from another country, visiting from another country, who never made it to that that tab, which is a comeback messaging. And then we also eventually changed the name of that tab to international students so that people would get to that tab or that section of the website sooner. So that's the questions we have so far. Are there any other questions?
We have one more question. Yep.
Okay.
From Tanya.
What other forms of prospect engagement should we be aware of beyond converting leads to enrollment? Persistence and confirmatory data important too, especially for lifelong learning. So this question taps into my very favorite term. The term that I think of when I'm working with a school or when we're working with a school is lifetime value of this student. What is the lifetime value of this student? And is it, a book club, OLLI program where someone's just coming for, I'll call it book club type of programs, and that lifetime value for them is, maybe $1,000 or something like that? Or is it someone who's taking an undergrad program, might also take further courses, or they're taking a certificate that's likely a lead into a graduate program? So thinking about what is the potential lifetime value, and then organizing your acquisition or your engagement around that lifetime value. Not shooting your wad quickly, trying to get them to take something quickly when it may be a longer consideration phase for them to be able to do something that's a larger program that would meet their needs. So when we talk about cost of acquisition, we talk about optimal cost of acquisition. So for someone that has a higher lifetime value, you may want to have more of a white glove engagement process. You may want to have a named person doing the outreach. So that person gets emails from one person rather than from the enrollment team. One of the things that we found is emails going out with a named person from the enrollment team is much more effective than having something that comes out from a department. And so that's something that would be a helpful engagement tool for this. And then in relationship to converting to leads to enrollment, one of the things that we like to think of is what's your ratio between what I'll call value-add content versus promotional content. So if you have a higher quality prospect or prospective student, we would encourage you to engage with them back to the relevant piece with content that's relevant to them, using higher quality content and less what I'll call promotional content. What I put in the promotional content category would be things like enroll now, because this is the enrollment date. Even information about the faculty, information about a program is all basically promotional content. What I mean by relevant value-add content is, in this field of study, here's something that was in the news that we find relevant. Here's something that our faculty published recently, and something that you might find of value. Here's a website that people in your profession find is a useful website because it provides information on an ongoing basis about how to do your job. So that kind of content can be very helpful about creating engagement and demonstrating that you're not just there to create a conversion to an enrollment. So I do think that is the end of our questions. We want to thank you for your time. And
thank you,
Andrea, what is the next step? We'll be sending out.
Well, the next step is I'll be sending you all the recordings and slides tomorrow. And I'm also going to include another invitation to our upcoming webinar in December. It's going to be 5 tips to enhance your lead nurture strategy. We spoke on that today, and it's going to be an in-depth conversation on how to and nurture your prospective students in a respectful and timely and relevant way.
Thank you all, and have a great day.
Thank you.